He was rejected for his first job for being overqualified. And decades later he would control his nation's entire economy and stand toe-to-toe with world leaders at the United Nations. Subscribe now, because Winston Dookeran's journey is unlike anything you've ever heard. This 81-year-old economist and statesman has lived one of the most remarkable careers in Caribbean history, from a small farming village to the highest levels of power. From being told his economics degree was useless to becoming governor of the central bank, Winston Dookeran was born on June 24, 1943, in Rio Claro, a small diverse village in southern Trinidad originally named after a clear flowing stream. He was one of 7 children born to Mule and Sumintra Dookeran, an Indo-Trinidadian family rooted in the farming traditions of rural Trinidad. Rio Claro was known for agriculture and forest hunting, a place where people worked hard, lived simply, and built tight communities. Young Winston grew up surrounded by the values of resilience, education, and public service that his parents instilled in all their children. The Dookeran family believed in the power of education to lift people out of poverty and create opportunities that previous generations never had. Winston attended Naparima College in San Fernando, one of Trinidad's most prestigious secondary schools. From there, he made a bold decision that would change his life. He left Trinidad to study at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, Canada. His older brother Ivan had gone there before him, and Winston followed in his footsteps in the 1960s as an international student. Canada in the 60s was a different world from rural Trinidad. The cold, the snow, the vast distances. But Winston threw himself into student life with boundless energy and a positive attitude. He became deeply involved in campus activities and quickly recognized that the University of Manitoba community was made up of many different nationalities. This diversity resonated with him and shaped his worldview. Winston studied economics and mathematics, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts with honors in economics in 1966. But his time at Manitoba gave him much more than a degree. He learned about the importance of patience and systematic thinking from the people of Manitoba. He discovered that leadership requires steadiness and building in stages. 3 professors stand out in his memory. Charles taught him his very first economics course and gave him an appreciation for the nobility of public service. Clarence Barber, the department head, taught him that economics is a science grounded in data and facts that should guide all decisions. And Peter St. John introduced him to international relations and the balancing act between local and global policy. These lessons would guide Winston's entire career. During his time at university, Winston and some friends campaigned for leadership positions in the University of Manitoba Students' Union. They recognized the diversity on campus and wanted to make sure all voices were represented. Winston became UMSU president, his first taste of leadership and political organizing. The experience taught him how to build coalitions, listen to different perspectives, and work toward common goals. These were skills he would use for the next 60 years. After graduating in 1966, many of Winston's friends stayed in Manitoba, but Winston felt the need to move on. He obtained a master's degree in economics from the prestigious London School of Economics and Political Science in the United Kingdom. With 2 degrees from world-class institutions, Winston returned home to Trinidad ready to make a difference. His goal, he later admitted, was to make Trinidad and Tobago like Canada. He wanted to bring the same systematic approach, the same patience, the same focus on data-driven policy that he had learned abroad. But he was about to get a harsh lesson in how the real world works. Winston applied for a teaching position with the Ministry of Education in Trinidad. He had an economics degree from the University of Manitoba and a master's from the London School of Economics. By any measure, he was highly qualified, but the ministry rejected his application. They told him his economics degree would be useless for a teaching career within their system. Winston was despondent. Here he was, educated at 2 of the best institutions in the world, and he could not even get a job teaching in his own country. It was humiliating and frustrating. But Winston refused to give up. The resilience he learned growing up in Rio Claro kicked in. He explored his options and reached out to Dom Basil Matthews, a Benedictine monk who was the principal of St. Benedict's College in La Romaine. Dom Basil Matthews was the first black Benedictine monk in Trinidad, a man who took to heart the sufferings and challenges of the poor. He saw Winston's potential and gave him his first teaching job. It was not the prestigious ministry position Winston had hoped for, but it was a start. and it marked the beginning of what would become a legendary career in public service, economics, politics, and academia. Winston would go on to become a respected economics lecturer and later professor of practice at the University of the West Indies. But first, he had to prove himself in the trenches. In the late 1960s, a new opportunity opened up for Winston in the Economic Planning Division of the Prime Minister's office. William Demas, economic advisor to Prime Minister Dr. Eric Williams, and Frank Rampersad, a leading economist, interviewed Winston and hired him. Winston was thrilled. He said it was a great experience to work with men of that caliber. He helped prepare work for Dr. Williams' third five-year development plan of 1969. Working directly in the Prime Minister's office gave Winston a ringside seat to observe how issues were debated and how decisions were made at the highest levels of government. This early exposure to leadership processes and economic policymaking would serve him incredibly well later in his career. He was learning not just economics, but politics, strategy, and the art of turning ideas into action. Winston's career as an economist took him to impressive heights. He became a senior economist at the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, known as ECLAC. He served on the executive board of the Inter-American Development Bank. He became governor of the Caribbean Development Bank, and in 1997, he was appointed governor of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, one of the most powerful positions in the country. As central bank governor from 1997 to 2002, Winston controlled monetary policy, managed currency reserves, and helped steer the entire economy. It was a far cry from being rejected for a teaching job because his degree was supposedly useless, but Winston's other calling was politics. His passion for good governance and his desire to improve Trinidad and Tobago pulled him into the electoral arena. In 1981, Winston contested the constituency of Chaguanas as a candidate of the United Labour Front. He won and became a member of parliament, serving in the House of Representatives. It was his first victory at the polls and the beginning of a long, complicated relationship with politics. In 1986, the United Labour Front merged with other parties to form the National Alliance for Reconstruction, known as the NAR. Winston again contested Chaguanas and won. The NAR, under the leadership of Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson, had massive success at the polls, winning an unprecedented 33 of the 36 constituencies. It was a political earthquake. Winston was made a cabinet member and appointed Minister of Planning and Mobilization. He later became deputy political leader of the NAR and a senior member of the government. He even acted as prime minister on several occasions when Robinson was away. But the most dramatic moment came in 1990 when Winston was thrust into the ultimate test of leadership. On July 27, 1990, members of the Jamaat al-Muslimin, a radical Islamic group, attempted a coup. They stormed the parliament building and the state television station, taking Prime Minister Robinson and several other government officials hostage. The nation was thrown into chaos. Violence erupted in the streets. Buildings burned. People died. And for 6 terrifying days, nobody knew if democracy would survive. During the coup attempt, Prime Minister Robinson was being held hostage. Winston Dookeran, as deputy political leader and senior cabinet member, found himself acting as prime minister. He had to help coordinate the government's response, maintain order, and work toward a peaceful resolution. It was the most intense pressure anyone could face. Lives hung in the balance. The future of the nation was uncertain, and Winston had to stay calm, make decisions, and lead. The coup eventually failed. The hostages were released. Robinson survived, though he was badly beaten. Democracy was restored, but the experience left deep scars on everyone involved, including Winston. He had seen how fragile democratic institutions could be, and how quickly everything could fall apart. After that traumatic experience, Winston stepped back from frontline politics for a while. He pursued his professional work as an economist and academic, but politics kept calling him back. In 2002, he returned to political life as a member of the National Congress, winning a seat for St. Augustine. In 2006, Winston did something bold. He founded a new political party called the Congress of the People, known as Coup. The party advocated for good governance, transparency, and accountability. Winston says it was the first time a political party in Trinidad made good governance a central platform issue, though he notes the topic had long been discussed in academic circles. Within a year, by 2007, Coup fought its first election and got 23.5% of the vote. It was a great accomplishment for such a young party, but because of Trinidad's winner-take-all electoral system, Coup did not win a single seat despite getting almost a quarter of the votes. In 2010, everything changed. Coup joined with other parties to form the People's Partnership Coalition. Winston contested the constituency of Tunapuna and won. On May 28, 2010, he was appointed Minister of Finance. At 67 years old, Winston Dookeran was now in charge of the entire national budget, tax policy, and economic strategy. He immediately began implementing programs designed to jumpstart the stagnant economy. His stewardship earned respect both domestically and internationally. In December 2011, Standard & Poor's rating agency gave Trinidad and Tobago an AA- rating with a stable outlook, a strong vote of confidence in Winston's economic management. In June 2012, Winston was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs, a portfolio he held until June 2015. As Foreign Minister, Winston traveled the world representing Trinidad and Tobago. He attended high-level meetings at the United Nations. He negotiated with other Caribbean leaders. He hosted visits from the Vice President of the United States and the President of China. He led efforts to establish Trinidad as a diplomatic training center for the region, working with the University of the West Indies and the United Nations to create programs for training the diplomats of the future. Winston believed Trinidad had to become a multilingual country to thrive in the modern world, and he worked to make that vision a reality. One of Winston's proudest achievements as foreign minister was his role in the arms trade treaty negotiations at the United Nations. Trinidad and Tobago led the Caribbean movement in this effort. After a long and difficult process, the treaty was finally agreed upon. It was a global treaty that required cooperation from nations large and small, and Winston had helped make it happen. He also pushed for reform in the architecture of international financial institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, and the Inter-American Development Bank. Winston advanced many arguments for why these institutions needed to change how they operated, particularly in how they treated small developing nations. He had fertile debates with officials at these organizations, demanding that small states have a real voice in global economic governance. In an interview during his time as foreign minister, Winston was asked about his personal objectives after such a long career in politics. His answer revealed his character. He said he saw Trinidad and Tobago as a country that would be respected for its adherence to fundamental principles of good governance in democratic societies. He wanted dialogue to take place openly and frankly. He wanted the country to comply and cooperate with all international obligations. Winston was not interested in power for its own sake. He was interested in building institutions, establishing principles, and leaving a legacy of good governance that would outlast any individual leader. When Winston left the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in June 2015, many expected him to retire. He was 72 years old. He had served as an MP, a cabinet minister, acting prime minister, central bank governor, and foreign minister. He had founded a political party. He had survived a coup. He had negotiated international treaties. What more was there to do? But Winston Dookeran does not retire. He moves forward. He became a professor of practice at the University of the West Indies, teaching the next generation of economists and policymakers. He became an adjunct professor at the University of Toronto. He worked as a consultant for international organizations. Fifth, small states can punch above their weight. Winston has spent his entire career proving that Trinidad and Tobago, despite its small size, can lead on international issues, influence global policy, and earn respect from much larger nations. And finally, education is the foundation of everything. From his early schooling in Rio Claro to his degrees from Manitoba and the London School of Economics to his current role training the next generation of leaders, Winston has always believed in the transformative power of education. It lifted him out of rural poverty. It gave him the tools to serve his country. And now he is using it to help others do the same. Winston Dookeran may not be a household name outside the Caribbean, but his impact has been felt far beyond Trinidad's shores. From the United Nations to the Inter-American Development Bank to ECLAC to international universities, Winston has helped shape how the world thinks about small state development, economic policy, and sustainable growth. He has lived through political violence, economic crises, and personal setbacks, and he has never stopped working, never stopped learning, never stopped believing that good governance and sound policy can make people's lives better. That is what happened to Winston Dookeran, and at 81, his story is still being written.